Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Jacqueline Cortez Salmons here at Transformation Health and Wellness. I'm glad you're here to join us today. It's June 24th, 2020. We are zipping through this year. I can't believe it's over halfway done. We're almost ready for like Christmas in July. So it's just been a wild whirlwind for sure. I know that a lot of us have been experiencing it, which leads me to today's topic. I wanted to talk to you guys today about stress and our immune function. This is a highly stressful time, and I don't care, whether it's because of COVID or if it's because of the social unrest right now and injustices and so forth. It's really just very stressful. Unemployment rates have been up, job security, small businesses. There are a lot of aspects of our day-to-day life that are certainly under an enormous amount of stress. Even just kids getting through school. I know the school year's over for the majority of us, but even how the reopening is going to look is also a contributor to our stress. And I would really encourage you to try to keep those stress levels as best you can down to a minimum, because it does affect our immune health. I've actually been doing some research on a particular article. If you guys follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you'll see some of these posts throughout the week. I try to highlight an article every week and kind of pull out some little excerpts from that article, and I'll give you the link. But even as early as 200 AD, there were reports that women, specifically they studied women, who had kind of depression, what they described as melancholic personality, so under a lot of stress, had a higher likelihood of developing cancer. So as early as that, guys, we knew that there's an association between overall health and stress levels. Even in the 1920s, that they were studying the effects of tuberculosis and who was more susceptible to tuberculosis and who wasn't. And they actually found that those individuals who were at higher levels of stress had more of a susceptibility to tuberculosis. Going even further than that, they even found that people who were under an undue amount of stress had a decrease in the phagocytes. And the phagocytes are the little cells that actually chomp up the bacteria. They eat the bad guys. So we want our phagocytes to be up when we're infected, but we had a decrease in phagocyte activity against tuberculosis when we were under an undue amount of stress. This is real, guys. This is not like a new, feel-good philosophy. We should just meditate and be zen. This is real. So study after study after study over the centuries, right? Again, going all the way back to 200 AD, we've known about this all the way up until present day. Multiple studies are listed in this review article that I've been going through. What we also know is that the undue amount of stress, or large amounts of stress, also affect our cognition, our ability to form long-term memories. They affect neuron development, so actually the growth of nerve cells. We obviously have had a high correlation between stress levels and heart disease. So again, it increases our blood pressure, it increases our pulse, increases heart rate, pulse. But with that, then we definitely see an accelerant of heart disease when we have a high amount of stress. It also increases our ability to make clots in our blood, which can then lead to stroke and heart attack. So this is a very real risk. So I would encourage you to find some ways that are healthful to manage your stress levels. One of the issues is that I think we turn to coping mechanisms, and we kind of affectionately refer to it as the COVID-20, right? Which is the 20 pounds that everybody's going to gain while on COVID quarantine. And while we sort of say it tongue in cheek, it's really kind of fork in mouth, that we are turning a lot of times to food for emotional support and kind of stress management. I know I like to bake with my kids at home when we're going through this process. I can't tell you how many times we've made pizza dough. I have kind of never in their existence in all of 12 years made pizza dough from scratch, but this is now a thing in our household, and it's certainly not helpful. And so I'm really trying to get back in touch with my body and recognizing, I was even talking to my staff today, that every time I kind of eat something very sugary or heavy with carbs, I get very cold. It's an uncomfortable feeling for me. So it's like an indicator to me that I need to cut down on those things and help support my health a little bit better. So the problem is baking fun, eating said baked goods, not helpful for us. So if we're going to be cooking or baking with our kiddos, then bake things like asparagus. You can bake even like sweet potato chips, make like a little thicker slices, roll them in some olive oil with a little salt and pepper, or even some cinnamon. Oh my goodness, I know what I'm making tonight. So you can do this and then put those in the oven. So that's still baking. We can have creative elements that are going to be healthful for us as well. You can grill chicken. We can, grill some portobello mushrooms, chop up some really good sort of stir fry and kind of flash or blanch that. Great asparagus, tomato recipes. So there's a number of things that you can do to be really healthful in that regard. I know another big thing that we've turned to, a lot of my patients have turned to, is the use of alcohol as a stress reliever. Now, remember, a lot of this is making us very depressed anyway. Like, we're not seeing our friends, we're not socializing, we're not seeing our parents, our kids can't play with their friends. This is depressing, right? So in lieu of that, then we're actually implementing more of a depressant with alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. So you're actually making your depression worse with alcohol. Some people will give me the excuse, well, I need it just to fall asleep. Okay, but there's a stimulant element because alcohol converts to sugar. And not to mention that, for example, I'm just saying, I've heard reports, Fireball whiskey, for example, is huge amounts of sugar, huge. Rum, most whiskeys, all of these alcohols have a ton of sugar, which again is that stimulant. So it's going to keep you up. It's going to keep you, jittery. It's going to stimulate that pancreas to have to work on overdrive with insulin, leading to insulin resistance in the long run. So you can see how this sort of sets off a cascade of unhealthful responses, even though we're trying to do something sort of coping wise for our body. We're not doing it a benefit. Same thing if we're sort of more agitated and aggressive. I know a lot of folks have said, you know what, I'm just going to go smoke a cigarette. Like, I can't even, I need to calm down. I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. Well, it's not really the smoking the cigarette, right? Because again, that nicotine is a stimulant. So smoking a cigarette is not optimal for calming you down. What's really calming you down are the long drags. So it's that deep breath in and that slow exhale out. Again, I've just read about these things, not personal experience by any means. But with that, then it's not really calming you down. What would be better for calming you down is taking some deep, slow breaths, centering your focus again, kind of shutting your eyes, block out the rest of the world for a minute, and then re-engage in the rest of the world. So some tips for you today. You want to make sure that, again, minimize the stressors as much as you can. Things that you can avoid involving yourself in, please avoid involving yourself in, right? So I always say if you could remove all stressors, then they wouldn't be stressful. Right? So as we approach the first of the month, if you could pay all your bills on the first of the month, your bills wouldn't stress you out. So there's not always the ability to remove a lot of those stressors, but things that you can remove, you should. So if it stresses you out when your kids have 5 friends over, don't have 5 friends over, right? Don't volunteer for one more thing when your time is already limited and very strained. Like, don't volunteer for the church, potluck and things like this. If it's one more committee that's going to occupy your time and take away from your peace, don't engage in things that are going to disturb your peace. To that end, as much as I want you to follow me on YouTube and I want you to subscribe and notifications, all these things, seriously limit your utilization of social media. It is just a firestorm out there, and I find that it even disturbs my peace, and I just kind of like gel on the couch because I just can't even at some point. It's just too much, and you see so much conflicting information. You don't know what to believe. You don't know who's a real resource. There's fact checkers. Just calm down, turn it off, right? So just shut it down, turn it off, do a puzzle, read a book, something preferably that predates 2020. So again, you're not reading the book Triggered or what have you, which I own, not going to lie. But that being said, something that's like kind of apolitical, anti-revolution, not having anything to do. Read Harry Potter, for heaven's sakes. Read some kids' book. I actually have taken a liking to things that are sort of young adult books, just because they're not so complicated. I don't have to overthink. I think all day long. I don't want to have to overthink. So when I read, I try to pick something that's relatively light, easy to digest, and just kind of get my mind off the rest of the ails of the world. Spend time with family if your family is not one of your main stressors, right? Because sometimes there's always that one member of the family that we don't necessarily feel relaxed around. So avoid that individual. But otherwise, if there are people within your household, again, within safety's realm, right, of what current recommendations are, then spend time with that family. Really engage, make eye contact. Everybody put your phones down, swim in the pool, be outside, mow your lawn. do the things that are going to be really healthful for you and engaging for you so that you can diminish those stressors, and your immune system is going to benefit as a result. Get out in the sunshine. That's going to be some good vitamin D. So you want to make sure that you're getting your source of vitamin D. Vitamin D is hugely immunoprotective. It's really going to protect that immune response and boost it, such that even if you're exposed to any virus, that your body is able to block that kick, right? So we're acting on defense at this point, and we want to make sure that we don't even allow any virus the ability to enter into our systems, right? So you want to do that. Make sure that you're making healthful food choices. I cannot emphasize this enough. Again, when we have these inflammatory foods, again, our frappuccinos and the lattes, don't get me wrong, love Starbucks, I love my coffee, I love my tea. But when we know that it's being inflammatory towards our bodies, we know that it also sacrifices an element of our immune response. Our immune response is primarily inflammatory. If our inflammation is already here all the time, all we have to go is here. Like, we don't have much more of a bump for us to have the capacity to mount if we're hit with a virus or a bacteria or any other type of stressor, even if it's a wound type of laceration. Our body can't heal from this if it's already stressed out to the max just because we're feeding it horrible foods, right? So eat things that are whole foods. I always say whole, unprocessed foods. People will tell you read labels, read labels, read labels, which is not a bad idea necessarily, but I have yet to see an apple with a label on it, right? So if it's a whole unprocessed food, it typically doesn't have a label at all, which indicates to you that it's a food that your body can actually recognize as food, can process as nutrition, and will go on very happily from there on. That being said, since we're on the topic of food, I can't get enough of talking about gut health and stress particularly. So again, gut health is critical, and stress really plays an effect. Again, if we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, which is our body's like always that very primal response to stress, is we're sort of running from predators, right? Oh my gosh, I have to get away, I have to get away. Well, we are not going to go sit at the buffet if we are the buffet, right? So we are not going to be digesting our food appropriately if we are running away from a woolly mammoth. It just doesn't happen. So our body shuts down on digestion aspect of things. And it can either cause irritable bowel syndrome, it can cause chronic constipation, it can cause nausea, hypersecretion of stomach acid, inappropriate breakdown of foods, proteins, peptides. And this is a problem in the long run as far as how our body then interprets our nutrition, how it stores the excess versus getting rid of the excess. Because if that gut's not functioning because we're running, trying to survive, then our body's going to go into storage mode, just like, hey, I'll deal with you later, right? So we want to make sure to keep an eye on that as well. So I hope some of these, the last one I wanted to tell you, of course, exercise, right? Exercise is always great, but what I really do is to I'm sort of if you guys know me, I'm sort of a one-stop shop kind of aspect of things. I like to do multiple things at once. So what I like to do is do push-ups against a countertop and count backwards from 10. So I'm getting good stimulation of the pectoral muscles. So I'm stimulating blood flow to the muscles. I'm stimulating airflow to the lungs because I'm taking those deep breaths in and out, pulling those ribs out with those pectoral muscles as well. And then also counting. So getting my mind off whatever process is sort of tumbling around in my brain and just kind of letting it go. And so that's implementing the exercise aspect, which has endorphin releases, which are good for calming. It's also giving me the deep breathing, which helps to, again, release some of those emotions and help you to calm down. And it's getting your mind off of things by like having to do multiple things at once. Then you're also not thinking about the news. I'm concentrating on, am I on number 9 or number 8 of my push-ups? So I usually just do a little bit of that, even just standing in the kitchen, like, gotta breathe it out, count backwards from 10. And I find it to be really helpful. So I hope these tips are helpful to you. I hope you take to heart what I have to say today, because again, stress is a huge, huge factor right now in the overall setting of the United States and even worldwide. Globally, this is really a problem. So hi to my friends overseas, if anybody's out there watching. But definitely we want to lower those stress levels so we can improve our immune response and allow our body the ability to fight off viruses the way it was meant to do evolutionarily. We can do this. Our bodies are designed beautifully to be able to do this. So let's not stand in their way on the process of the body trying to heal itself. So I will talk to you guys next Wednesday. Make sure that you like, subscribe, click on notifications and so forth, so you can get notified whenever we have a new video. We'll talk with you next week. Yay.